Welcome to TaiwanTalks, covering the latest global news from a Taiwan perspective. I'm Albert Cho. Taiwan is gearing up for its upcoming presidential election in January next year. As with previous presidential elections, this one promised to be highly competitive, making it difficult to predict the next president of Taiwan. Joining us today are Donovan Smith, political analyst specializing in Taiwanese politics, Campus Magazine co-publisher, ICRT Radio Central Taiwan correspondent, and a former Ancient Taichung chair, and Chen Fang-yu, assistant professor of political science at the Soochow University. Very warm welcome to all on the show. There are three major presidential candidates with the possible independent candidates. They are William Lai from the DPP, Hou You from the KMT, Ko Wen-je from the TPP, and Foxconn founder Terry Gou. Since January, polling data for the presidential election has demonstrated significant fluctuations in candidates' popularity. Initially, Hou You led in the polls, with Ko Wen-je ranking third. However, following the KMT's recruitment of Hou You in May, subsequent polls showed a noticeable shift in rankings. According to one TVBS poll, Ko Wen-je has even led with 33% ahead of Lai and Hou. Meanwhile, other surveys indicate Lai Ching-te is currently leading, followed by Ko, with Hou in the last place. The voter support for Lai substantially increased by 10 percentage points to 33%. The support for Ko also decreased from 33% to 32%, while the support for Hou ended up at 25%. So Donovan, please give us a concise overview of the race for an international audience.
William Lai is representing the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party, which of course is the incumbent party. However, the current president, Tsai Ing-wen, can't run again because of term limits.
Right.
He's essentially running on being President Tsai 2.0. He's going to carry forth her cross-strait policies, foreign policy, and much of the domestic policies that the DPP administration has followed. Hou You of the Kuomintang, or the KMT, he and his party are considered more China-friendly. He wants to reopen negotiations with China and try and reduce tensions through dialogue. And then he is currently the mayor of Taiwan's most populous city, New Taipei. Ko Wen-je is a former surgeon who won a surprise election as an independent in Taipei City to become the mayor there, served his 2 terms, and in 2019 founded the Taiwan People's Party. And the main issues in this election are power, particularly whether or not to continue with nuclear power. Their plants are slated to be shut, but the KMT and TPP candidates want to keep them open because there are concerns about shortages. And of course, the perennial main issue in national elections is relations with China.
Okay, Fang-yu, in Taiwan, when more than 2 candidates draw from the same voter base, it can lead to unexpected outcomes. Some people compare the current 2024 election to the 2000 election, where supporters of KMT, known as the Pen Blue Camp, were split between 2 groups, leading to the victory of the DPP back in 2000. Chen Shui-bian, he won the election. Does the fragmentation of Pen Blue Camp for the upcoming election pose a disadvantage to its prospects? So what's your take on this?
I think, yeah, sure. If there's some split between one camp, that will have advantage for the other one, right? But there's some similarities and between here and the year 2000. So, for example, there is a very powerful candidate in the Pen Blue side. That is Song Chu-yi, James Song, the head of the former the Taiwan province government, and he almost won the election. Okay, and Ko Wen-je is ranked very high in the poll. So there's a similarity. However, it's quite different, right? So for the Song Chu-yu's team, he had a lot of support from the so-called Pen Blue side, and he had a team full of the experienced former officials. However, Ko Wen-je is a non-traditional third-party candidates, and he had no traditional teams and no supporters of the traditional politicians. So still, the Courney do not have a local the supporters from
the grassroots supporters.
So there are some different points here.
Okay, kind of following up this question to Donovan is that, do you think there's any possibility that Ho, Ke, and Guo might decide to form a coalition, at the end of the day, with the aim to ending the DPP's 8-year rule and defeating Lai Ching-te?
There's been a lot of talk by all three candidates of some form of unity to try and, as they put it, topple the DPP.
Right.
However, for example, the KMT has come out. They came out with a non or anti-DPP platform. Just the other day, Terry Guo came out and said he also talked about unity in the Pan-Blue camp. However, there are some obstacles to this happening. Probably the easiest one I could see happening might be a reconciliation between the KMT and Terry Guo.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that I think they have something that they could offer him that he might want, and he's got to be looking at the polls and seeing how poorly he's polling. So I don't think that what they can offer him is the vice presidency and the premiership. Think of Lian Jian in the 1990s. I think that might entice him. I don't know if the KMT would want to offer that. That's a different question. I do not think that Ke Wen-je, outside of working with KMT in a few districts where they'll not run competing candidates, the legislative districts, he has said he's going to run to the end. He's raised money that he's going to be at the top of the ticket. I don't see the KMT or Ho playing second fiddle as a VP candidate. I think it's unlikely. It's theoretically possible. It did happen before. But the main reasons why I don't think that Ke will accept any offer is because he needs to, in using Taiwanese political speak, he needs to remain the hen of the party, which is the top of the ticket, who lends their star power and, of course, all the interviews and media and press attention to the party, which helps the legislative candidates or the chicks. And one of his big goals here are to establish his new party as a serious permanent force. He also has a very good chance of his party being the balance of power in the legislature, which would give him considerable leverage. And number three, he wants to make sure that his party does well on the party list vote for the legislature, because you get 50 NT per vote on that. And assuming turnout is normal in this election, that means that he could get, realistically, he could hope to get 150 to 200 million NT for the party.
Okay, likewise, Fang-yu, do you think this coalition possible?
Well, it's always a good idea of making a coalition to defeat the incumbent. However, there's some everyone has his own interests. So, for example, for Ke Wen-je, he's leading and ranked very high in the poll. There's no incentive for him to cooperate with the traditional Pan-Blue politicians, and he only has to convert maybe 5 or 10% of the vote from the Pan-Blue side. Then he can win. So he can win by himself. So there's no need for him to cooperate. And for Terry Guo, he's super rich, so there's nothing to offer for him. So
nothing to lose to lose the game either.
Yeah, it's just like just a game for a super rich man like him. So it's very difficult for them to persuade them to cooperate together.
Okay, let's kind of quickly turn to the weakness of this front runner, Lai Ching-te. In 2016 and 2020 election, President Tsai was successful in attracting young voters and intellectuals. So how does William Lai does this time? How does he differ from her as a DPP candidate this time?
Not a lot. Certainly on paper, there's very, very little difference. In style, both of them are look very peaceful. They're very placid. They're very disciplined. They actually have a lot in common. Their background is a little bit different because Tsai came out of a bureaucratic academic background, and she's an excellent diplomat.
Right.
Lai has a lot more experience in local politics, but
Right.
less on the international stage. So I think Tsai is probably the stronger of the two for international affairs. But Lai, I think, is actually stronger when it comes to domestic issues.
Okay, Fang-yu, what about you? Yeah.
Well, I think the significant disadvantage for Lai is that there's a fatigue for the ruling party because the DPP has already ruled for 7 or 8 years, and all of the dissatisfaction will go to Lai Ching-te. So he has to try very hard to persuade voters that to give DPP another term.
Especially younger voters, right?
Yeah, because the younger voters do not know what are the politicians doing. So for example, our students, the generation of students, they think that they just don't know the politicians.
Well, I mean, that also indicates another scenario where Cohen's, successfully gained the support from the younger generation. Why is this? I mean, used to be the, supporting the base for DPP, but now seems not to be anymore.
Yeah, and I think that Professor Chen made an excellent point. There's a lot of voter fatigue. In 2016 and 2020, this is post the sunflower protest movement. And the center of gravity in Taiwan's politics moved toward the DPP. And in the last two elections, there was only a choice between the DPP and the KMT, and the youth voters were not going to go for the KMT.
Right, yeah.
Now that they have another alternative, they find it quite exciting, and as I learned from your students, Professor, their ability to, the TPP and Cohen's ability to communicate, particularly on social media, they say that's very direct, it's refreshing,
Right.
and very effective.
Could be very sarcastic sometimes against the
Yes.
DPP too. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's now hear from Minze, President of the Formosa Association for Public Affairs, so-called FAPA, the largest Taiwan advocacy group in Washington, D.C. Our political editor, Rath Wen, spoke to him about why the next Taiwan president will be key to the U.S. and Asia.
President, as the largest Taiwan advocacy group in the U.S., how does the U.S. see the presidential elections that are coming up in January?
Taiwan is sitting in a very important, critical geographic location that is strategic to the United States and the Western world and all the allies in the democratic world. So it is important not just the geographic location. Taiwan Strait actually has more than 50% of world trade going through that, affecting the economy. So anything that's going to affect Taiwan's future, especially like a presidential election, is super important. And so it's in United States national interest to see Taiwan continue its democratic, free, and sovereign status, and then be aligned with the democratic world. So the election of next year, that shows the will of the Taiwan's people. And it's very important that we should continue the current path on the freedom, democracy, and human rights, and all this common value like what US has. So it is very important. People from all over the world will see the result of the presidential election of Taiwan to be an indication: are we going to be aligned with closer to China, or remain in the free world?
What does this mean for Taiwan-U.S. relations?
If this becomes law, then for the U.S. government, when they deal with any international organization that in regards to Taiwan's membership, the U.S. needs to take a very strong stance to oppose any distortion of Taiwan's status. That means Taiwan is not part of China. The bill is simply an enhancement between U.S. and Taiwan's relations, for sure. It is further define the claim that Secretary Blinken talked about, that Taiwan has never been part of China. It's very important in here talk about Taiwan's self-determination. So the right for peoples of Taiwan to make their own future. And this is a very important step.
Next president of Taiwan is very key to the world, not only to the people on this island, but in what way, Fang-yu, you think?
Well, during under the U.S. and China's competition, then the whole world is now paying attention to whether China will use force against Taiwan, and also Taiwan is now in the key position of geopolitics and also for the high-tech industries. So for so many factors that Taiwan is now in the center of the international politics. Yeah, but I think it's the advantage of the DPP because President Tsai Ing-wen has already established a very close ties with the Democratic allies and also with the U.S. So I think Lai Ching-te is just trying to have these legacies and to try to continue this way.
Okay, Donovan, in what way?
Yeah. I mean, the physical position of Taiwan, located as it is, about 50% of all world trade passes through the Taiwan Strait. If Taiwan is taken, the first island chain is broken, and geopolitically this completely changes the game. Because then you've got South Korea and Japan isolated, and they'll feel very much under threat. China has historical claims on the Ryukyu or Okinawan Islands. I'm sure that Japan would be very nervous and they'd be worried about their supplies of oil and other critical shipping routes being blocked. If there's a war, they would be blocked. So they would be in a serious situation. This, of course, would wreck the world economy. China would probably be blockaded. You'd have Taiwan missing with all the semiconductors. You'd have Japan and South Korea and Hong Kong basically cut off from the world economy. And so that would mean items like cell phones. If you had to replace your cell phone, you might have to spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to get it. The world economy would be really wrecked.
So Taiwan is very significant in terms of not only the cross-strait relations, but also the world trade. Okay.
Yes.
Now let's kind of talk about each candidate's party or campaign platform, and also kind of explain one by one. I know it's kind of big question, but kind of short to our international audience about each of their policies. Maybe Fang, you can go first. Yeah.
Well, maybe let's start with Ke Wen-je. Ke Wen-je is an interesting politician because he's coming from as a doctor, and firstly he was supported by DPP,
right.
And then he started to become more pro-China. I mean his foreign policies platform. But his strength is to point out all of the problems of the ruling party. So, for example, he pointed out that there's a skyrocketing housing price and the stagnated wages, and also a lot of political scandals of the ruling parties.
Right.
And then he can make it as short videos and make it on the social media and interact with younger generation voters. So that's why it makes him so popular, because he pointed out all of the problems. Although, in my view, he does not provide a very good alternative set of policies. However, people think that, okay, let's try another one, let's have another alternative. So he's quite popular right now. For the KMT, I think they are still trying to find something new because so far I think they are trying to unite for their party's affairs, and they are trying to find to unite on the Hou You-yi. So they do not have many new platforms, but all of the platforms are about China, pro-China.
Right.
So it seems like for KMT, every problems can be solved by China. So for example, Taiwan's economy, then let's seek the market in China, something like that. Okay. For the ruling DPP, and they have to try to persuade voters that they deserve another term. So they have to try to tell the voters why there's something left and how they are going to solve the problem. So, but there are some strengths for them, because just as said, DPP is very strong at the foreign policies, and also if you see the satisfaction rate for President Tsai Ing-wen, she's pretty high compared to previous two presidents. So it's the strength of the DPP.
Okay, I sort of ask you a different question, Donovan. So in your speculation, are there any potential game changers? We know that in the past, China's threatening Taiwan was one of them that could alter the campaign dynamics, the current one.
Yes.
So what's your prediction there?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. The biggest potential shock would be something that China does. And obviously there's a wide range of things that they can do. I think they'd be unlikely to, because they want the KMT to win. So I don't think that they're going to hand an easy victory to the DPP by being too difficult in this election cycle.
So CCP is smarter this time, you think?
I think so.
Okay.
But it's worth keeping in mind that the CCP tends to do things with their own internal politics as the priority. So if there is something domestic that Xi Jinping feels that needs to make a move on Taiwan to shore up the CCP's domestic power, they will do it regardless. So that's something to keep in mind. All things being equal, I don't think they'll cause trouble, but I do think that if there's a domestic reason, they might. There's a few other things that domestically could happen. An example is, for example, in the local elections last year, it turned out that a lot of politicians had plagiarized their theses.
Okay, yeah, that was one of the reasons DPP lost in 2018. Yeah.
And then here's just a very recent example. Courney recently came out, and he joined a rally, and a woman held up a sign which noted all the misogynistic things he'd said, and she was a very brave woman, because this was a very pro-crowd, and she came in for abuse at the event, and also abuse online afterward, which was appalling, of course. Did not really handle the response to this very well. What he should have done is he should have acknowledged his past mistakes, acknowledged that she had a right to say something, and so on and so forth. But he lost 10 points in the 20 to 29 and 30 to 39 demo among women. You know, in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, the final question is sort of tailor-made for Donovan as well. Like running a presidential election is not only about addressing up in the air issues, but also about requiring establishing connection with the local factions and mobilizing grassroots support. I mean, which party, to your perspective, does this the best so far?
Oh, definitely the KMT.
Okay.
The KMT has been at this since the early 1950s, and they still dominate at the local level. The DPP was founded in 1986, and they still haven't caught up yet.
Okay.
Almost all of the city and counties councils are dominated by the KMT. There are very rare exceptions, Tainan, although that's in trouble. And if you go all the way down to the local neighborhood borough chiefs, the Li Zhangs and the Lin Zhangs, these are your local political representatives that work out disputes between neighbors and liaise with the city government. And these people are heavily leaned toward the KMT. The KMT has an excellent organization. They've built this up over years, and the DPP is slowly getting better, but they've still got a long way to go. And the TPP, they just don't have any of this at all, really.
If you enjoyed the content of this episode, please leave a message on our YouTube channel, and do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.